Forensic experts help Kenya comb the attacked mall as death toll expected to slightly go up. Liberia's Charles Taylor to know war crimes appeal fate on Thursday. And it's back to school, but public schools reopen in Egypt, but their state repels some parents. Welcome to Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, Nigeria to invest $200 million of its sovereign wealth fund as a cushion against oil price fluctuations. And we showcase South Africa's rugby team's success in a new state-of-the-art Springbok Museum. We stay at this hour with our developing story in Kenya, and the Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku says a forensic audit is being carried out to ascertain the identity of the remaining victims and terrorists killed during the siege. Olelenku said once that is done, more information on the Westgate attack in Nairobi will be revealed.
With regard to the identity of the terrorists, we want to request the public and the international community to allow the forensic undertaking to determine the exact identity of the terrorists. As that now, we will not be able to give you a firm position with regard to the same. We have begun the exercise of addressing the forensic effort to determine the authenticity or otherwise whether there are still any bodies held up there. We are convinced that there will be insignificant, if any, bodies still held up there except for the terrorists. Again, if in the event of removing the rubble that come out to be, the information will come to the public.
Well, let's now cross over to Famida Miller at the Westgate Mall to give us more details on the Kenyan attack situation. Famida, initially the government had said it would allow journalists into the mall, but that was later rescinded. Do we know what explanation was given for this?
That's exactly right, Beatrice. What we had here just outside Westgate late afternoon on Wednesday was a group of media very interested in getting into that mall. At that point, we were told that we wouldn't be allowed into the building, but in the vicinity. So that would most likely be the entry road just outside the main entrance of that building. Within half an hour to 45 minutes, the military authorities here, as well as from the Deputy President's office, then said they had spoken to investigators in the mall, and they had said it's still a crime scene. There is too much evidence that still needs to be that they need to go through, and for that reason wouldn't allow media into the mall for fear that they would tamper with that evidence. This is still a crime scene. We had initially up to 4 floors in Westgate, and with over 80 shops and with hostages as well as those attackers throughout the mall, there certainly is a very large area to cover. Beatrice.
Well, Famida, the siege has come to an end though, but what is going on now at the moment at the mall?
Well, it's been just over 24 hours since President Uhuru Kenyatta announced that the siege was over. And what they're embarking now on is what the Interior Secretary Joseph Olelenku called the next phase of this program. They are looking at forensic evidence. They've roped in the services of security organizations from abroad, including Canadians, Americans, British, as well as Israeli experts to assist them with the analysis of the forensics that they go through in that mall. Earlier in the day, on Wednesday, what they were doing was still combing the mall, looking for any explosives that may be around. There was concerns that there may be booby traps rather throughout the mall. And at this point, what they want to do is remove the rubble. You'll remember that 3 floors of that building collapsed on Tuesday afternoon, trapping hostages. They say there could possibly be up to 8 bodies there, as well as attackers. Now, they haven't confirmed a number for that. However, speaking to the State House spokesperson, Manoa Esepisu, he had said that at one point there was one terrorist that was seriously wounded and he was removed from the building. However, he couldn't say if that attacker was still alive. So at this point, investigations continue. There's questioning of 10 people who were arrested on Monday afternoon, as well as looking through the building for further evidence, removing rubble and uncovering those bodies. Beatrice.
Well, Famida, do we know, though, when that forensic audit will come to an end?
Well, what the Interior Secretary, Joseph Olelenko, has indicated that it would take nothing less than 7 days. So looking at media wanting to enter that premises this afternoon is highly unlikely. It's most probable that there will be access to that building within 6, possibly 7 days, but it's not likely any time before that.
All right, CCTV's Famida Miller at the Westgate shopping mall there, joining us with the very latest. Thank you. Now, security forces have spent the day searching for bodies and evidence at Westgate. The government says the death toll is not expected to rise significantly, but many Kenyans remain desperate for more answers. CCTV's Robert Nagila with more.
Cell phone footage reveals some of the damage inflicted this past few days at Westgate Mall. To the right, you can see where the rooftop parking collapsed during the final hours of the siege. Several bodies are thought to be beneath the rubble.
The next phase really is making sure that we know what is under the rubble.
A day after the Kenyan government declared the security operation at the Westgate Mall over, focus is now shifting from a rescue effort to a recovery effort. However, there are still several unanswered questions. First, the number of casualties. The government puts the figure at 61 civilians. Al-Shabaab is claiming more than double that number were killed. Then, the suspects. The government says 5 were killed and 1 injured during the operation, and that 11 were arrested at the airport. It previously said up to 15 hostage takers were involved.
I just want to make a small clarification. We say, if I say 10 were killed, no, we have killed 5 terrorists.
Then, the missing. The government says everyone has been accounted for. The Red Cross says more than 70 are still missing.
We got a lot of information about people that were supposed to be in one place or in another place. For instance, we were told there may be 18 people still held up on the 4th floor, but then yesterday we discovered those people in fact were evacuated on the 1st day.
There is plenty of confusion too about who was involved. Despite several witness accounts and the word of Kenya's foreign minister, the government is now saying no women were among the attackers. What is clear is that this was well planned. The militants are thought to have rented a shop at Westgate 3 months before the attack. The FBI, British, German, Canadian and Israeli investigators are also picking through the rubble. Kenyans and people around the world are eager not just for clues, but for some credible answers. Robert Nagila, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
The whole country is in mourning. For many, what happened at Westgate couldn't be more devastating. This young man had been looking forward to the birth of his 2nd child. He was among more than 60 known to have died in the mall. His family can barely make sense of it.
We don't know what it means even to our family.
Many people are going through similar agony.
This is Kenya's bloodiest terror attack since the embassy bombing in 1998. Some are even calling it Kenya's 9/11. But it has brought the citizens together, and the message is loud and clear. They will stand together. They won't crumble, and terrorists will not defeat them.
Thousands have lined up to donate blood or food or support.
We are overwhelmed, we are amazed. This Kenyan spirit is one like no other, to say the least. People have turned up in great numbers from all walks of life.
It is a good spirit that Kenyans have shown actually that they are sometimes during politics, they get themselves in politics, But when it comes a time like this one, whereby we really need each one of us to be together with the rest, and therefore the few of cooperation.
A bit disappointed because I don't have enough blood. Maybe as working as a volunteer, helping those people who need my help.
Others are donating money, many rallying behind a solidarity campaign. Just one fundraising plan brought in more than $750,000 in 2 days. The president is appealing to Kenyans to stand together.
We have prevailed just by being who we typically are from the time of our forefathers. In caring and giving, in loving and uniting, never tiring and not hesitating, in resolutely looking forward and never turning back. Our attackers wish to destroy the essential character of our society. They failed.
For those who lost someone, it's a tragic time, but Kenyans are ensuring they don't face it alone. Celestine Karone, CCTV, Nairobi.
Well, as Kenya mourns the victims of Saturday's Al-Shabaab terror attack, Muslim leaders in the Eastleigh suburb of Nairobi say they are battling against radical clerics trying to lure youth into extremism. And with the Somali community likely to come under scrutiny in police investigations, some residents in the area, nicknamed Little Mogadishu, fear a backlash against them. Clementine Logan has this report.
This is Little Mogadishu. Like its Somali counterpart, Eastleigh is a target for Al-Shabaab. Its residents fear the terrorist group's presence and influence is never far away. Muslim leaders here say the number of Somali and Kenyan youths being lured into Al-Shabaab's ranks has spiked in recent years.
It's the radical views that attracts the young people to these radical clerics. The views that they're better Muslims and that they are going out to change the world and make it a better place for Muslims to live. Those are the views that attract the youth.
Muslim leaders are anxious to change Eastleigh's reputation as a breeding ground for these recruits. That's also because attacks by Al-Shabaab throw the spotlight on Eastleigh and its Somali connections. In November, mobs carried out revenge attacks when a suspected Al-Shabaab grenade explosion killed 9 people. Residents are now wary of an onslaught of police raids they say target innocent Somalis.
Tensions are very high here and I'm afraid, but I'm innocent. Those behind the attack say they are Muslims, so now Muslims are afraid the police will invade Eastleigh and arrest people here. I'm afraid.
The attack shocks me a lot. I was shocked to see my brothers and sisters suffering in Westgate. Whenever an attack like this happens, police usually come and arrest people in Eastleigh, claiming they support Al-Shabaab. But Al-Shabaab aren't Muslims. They are tarnishing the name of Islam.
Some analysts say Saturday's attack is intended to provoke a violent backlash against ethnic Somalis by the Kenyan government and citizens. They say this would play into the hands of Al-Shabaab by helping them garner support within the community. But community leaders are determined to prevent this from happening and are appealing for cooperation with the government and police.
We just have to be very vigilant and work very closely with the security system and report any suspicious activities or suspicious persons, and that will put us in better position.
The appeal is that as the security and the law enforcement agents move to unearth the truth behind what happened at Westgate, they should make sure that they do not punish the innocent. They should be very professional in whatever they are doing, because when they arrest and also punish the innocent, that causes more radicalization also. So there is that fear in the community now that we are going to be targeted now as the Muslim community.
Members of this community are united with Kenyans across the country in their shock and sorrow over the Westgate attack. Many hope that at this time of national mourning, national unity will prevail. Clementine Logan, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
The Ethiopian government has offered its support to Kenya after the deadly Westgate attack. Now Ethiopia has been in the forefront in the fight against terrorism. CCTV's Girum Chala has more from Addis Ababa.
The attack on shoppers in a Nairobi mall has shocked Kenya's neighbors to the north.
We strongly condemn this kind of horrendous act to those who are our brothers, who are our blood, our friends, to those who help us when we are in need, and those who are our neighbors.
This act of terror is really saddening. This happened on innocent and peaceful people, and it's unacceptable by both God and us humans as well.
Just like Nairobi, this city has long been threatened by Al-Shabaab. So far, the Somali militants have not struck here, but the government says it remains constantly on guard.
We've managed to keep it there, but we still have at the receiving end of such a danger, and we still have to be on the lookout. Unless we bury it all together, the danger is already there, and then one day or another, we still may receive that atrocity, and we have to always be on the lookout.
Ethiopian troops have been fighting against Al-Shabaab inside Somalia, but the government here says military action alone is not enough.
We have to fight backwardness, and when people rekindle hope, manage to bring about betterment of their life, then there is no way that such kind of evil actors could hide out here and there.
Many Somalis also live in this country, and they, like so many other Somalis across the world, have condemned Al-Shabaab. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Let's now get more details on the Kenya terror attack, and in studio with me is a counter-terrorism expert and trainer, Mr. Mbijiwe Mwendwa. Mbijiwe, thank you very much for joining us now. First of all, give us your assessment of the security operation so far.
Good evening. I want to appreciate you calling me over here. Firstly, I must say that this has been a very sad case in our country, but one of the things that is certainly going to happen out of this is we're going to have a lot of heightened security after this. I also expect that the security forces and the entire nation, even the region, we're going to learn very, very important lessons in this after this unfortunate event, lessons that ought to make us much safer as a nation.
We're going to learn many lessons from this event, though, but are there things that the Kenyan government or the public could have done to avert this disaster in Westgate?
Yes, I believe that terrorism is a process, or rather a terror attack takes a process. And there are up to 7 steps before an attack could happen, which are surveillance, and then they seek information, they go ahead and they have a suspicious behavior, and a terrorist will also be acquiring supplies at some point in their planning. At some point they will do trial runs, at some point they will now get into possession. It is hard to stop the attack when it gets to the 7th critical point, which is getting into position, which is what we saw on Saturday morning. But any step before the 7th step, you can stop it, including when they're doing surveillance. So we should be watching out for suspicious people around us. But unfortunately, when it gets to the point where they have to attack, the real attack, then there's hardly much you can do. You can only stop it before it starts. And I think we had the opportunity to do that. Maybe we missed it at some point.
Yes, we probably missed it at some point. But if you're talking about 7 steps before the actual act is performed, what is it that was missed here?
The 7 steps can take any length of time depending on the target they have chosen. It can take up to 5 years, like they took 5 years to attack the U.S. Embassy in downtown Nairobi in 1998. That had begun to be planned from 1993. This one, I was reading the media today in the newspapers that there was an intelligence report that this started like 3 months before it happened. So I think what we missed, or where we may have gone wrong, is to be able to detect, because terrorism has 2 steps. You can either detect or deter, and I think we failed in detecting it.
In terms of the information from the Kenyan authorities, what in your assessment went well and what didn't work?
Do you mean during the attack itself?
During the attack itself, yes.
I think the Kenyan government did its best, because again, regionally this was the first time this was happening to us. And so I think the government did their very best. We saw the security officials in place. I think, though, that in future we can have a more coordinated special force In other nations, they have very specialized units that depend on one command. But now, when you have several arms of security that are coming together for the first time during the attack, it's very hard to coordinate unless they had done practice before. That's why you see nations and armies doing drills before a major war or before a war. If you have to assemble the whole units at the war, then you are gonna run into some problems. I hope they were not coming together for the first time at the Westmore. I hope they had come together in their practicing and acting together. If not, then that's a big lesson we've learned right there as a nation. We need to centralize our special operations forces so that on the day of need, they have one command, they can move as one man.
It is the first attack, of course, the first big major attack since the 1998 U.S. bombing here in Nairobi, Kenya. But Kenya has also suffered other small attacks from alleged Al-Shabaab groups there. In terms of the public's response and reaction, what is it the public should be aware of? What is it they should do? What is it they should not do?
I think one of the things we should do with the public is to be very frank with them. The government cannot miss that opportunity. At this point, when our emotions had been strained for too long, hoping and praying that there was someone we could rescue, we would expect the government to be very frank with us. We don't care how many people we may have lost. It is important that we know. It's not good that we are taken in circles. So the public really wants the truth. Secondly, the public after this needs to be sensitized on security measures, because I think sometimes we as the public behave sometimes very casually when it comes to responding to these attacks. We saw one time here a public bus drive the entire morning with an IED, improvised device, explosive device in the bus for the whole morning, and they wouldn't even know what they were carrying. So I think the government has its work cut out already. We need to sensitize the public, and that's what we do at our individual levels, to try and sensitize the public on these kind of situations.
All right, Mbijiwe Mwendwa, the counter-terrorism expert and trainer, thank you for coming into Africa Live. Meanwhile, Uganda has warned that the fight against Al-Shabaab is now being hampered by the lack of troops. The East African country is a major contributor to the African Union's AMISOM force. Uganda's military says AMISOM has been stretched to its limit. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria has that story.
The AU force AMISOM has driven Al-Shabaab from Mogadishu and strongholds including the southern port of Kismayo. But Uganda's military says AMISOM needs more soldiers to keep up the momentum and to prevent Al-Shabaab from regrouping and attacking other East African states.
We cannot open new areas. We cannot go out to do more offensive operations against Al-Shabaab. It's unfortunate because then that gives them time to recover. It's like having a patient and we're just giving him a dose which keeps him alive but not recovering.
AMISOM currently has just over 17,000 troops in Somalia drawn from countries including Uganda, Burundi and Kenya. Wamala says it needs at least 25,000 soldiers.
The alternative then would be make sure that we train very fast, equip and pay the Somalis, so that the Somalis then can fill the gaps, which of course would make sense because the Somalis' army would then be able to grow. Because at the end of the day, the Somalis must take the security of their country as their responsibility.
AMISOM troops have been fighting Al-Shabaab in Somalia since 2007, but force commanders have consistently complained they need more men and military support. Uganda says the current best possible outcome in Somalia is to consolidate the area controlled by AU forces. And as Westgate has shown, that is clearly not enough to neutralize the threat from Al-Shabaab and its allies. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
Well, the Westgate siege has provided more dramatic evidence of the power of social media. And just about every moment has been documented on Twitter by survivors, the authorities, even Al-Shabaab themselves, and for millions worldwide. It's been a chance to reach out to those caught up in the tragedy.
A shaky cell phone clip that gave the first real insight into the terror at Westgate. Since its exclusive broadcast on CCTV this past weekend, This clip has amassed more than 3 million hits on YouTube. The story of Westgate itself has become an online phenomenon. We can chat it over from the first messages late Saturday morning. Is it true what I'm hearing that Westgate is under attack by armed robbers? Heavily armed thugs have taken over Westgate shopping mall. All occupants and shoppers are on the floor. Few gunshots heard, more to follow. Local radio presenter Ruhila Hadatia posted these pictures on the roof of the mall. Moments later, she was among those shot dead. As the gunmen swept into Westgate, shoppers turned to their cell phones. Then the messages became more terrifying and the first pictures emerged. Al-Shabaab used its Twitter account to claim responsibility. The initial online response from the authorities suggested some confusion, though a day later, the President and Interior Minister went on Twitter and have stayed there. With the entire nation a stand with the families of those who have lost their lives and extend every Kenyan's deepest sympathy. Many Kenyans and people worldwide have used Twitter to express their anger, sympathy and solidarity. Our enemies thought they would weaken us. They only showed us our stronger side. We pray for the hostages, the wounded, the survivors and their loved ones, the security forces and leaders. As the candles of hope and courage continue to burn, Kenyans shall win in the end. Thanks for all the efforts put to save lives. 4 days into the siege, social media is being used to coordinate blood donations, fundraising, even the hunt for the missing. Whatever the reality inside this mall, social media has ensured everyone with access to a smartphone can feel they are involved. Robert Soy, CCTV.
Africa Live takes a short break, but coming up on the program. Liberia's Charles Taylor to know war crimes appeal fate on Thursday. Liberia's ex-president Charles Taylor is to know his fate before a UN-backed court on Thursday when it hands down an appeals judgment against his 50-year sentence for arming Sierra Leonean rebels. Charles Taylor, now 65, was found guilty last year of lending support to rebels from neighboring Sierra Leone who waged a terror campaign during a civil war that claimed 120,000 lives. And as Liberia's president from 1997 to 2003, Charles Taylor supplied rebels with guns and ammunition in exchange for blood diamonds mined by slave labor during the conflict, infamous for its multinationals, drug children, soldiers and sex slaves. Presiding Judge George King is to hand down a verdict at 900 GMT at the Special Court for Sierra Leone in Leicester, a suburb just outside The Hague, where Taylor's case was moved for security reasons. His sentencing in May 2012 was the first handed down by an international court against a former head of state since the Nazi trials at Nuremberg in 1946. Now, Charles Taylor has maintained his innocence throughout the trial. And for more on this story, we cross over to our correspondent Sandra Gathman, who joins me on the line from The Hague. Sandra, what should we expect tomorrow?
Well, as you mentioned, tomorrow is the final chapter in the life of this special court set up to try criminals involved in the Sierra Leonean civil war, wrapping up, of course, after this handing down of the absolute final decision on Charles Taylor's trial, and it's the day he'll find out how he'll spend his remaining days. And it all starts tomorrow at around 11 a.m. local time. The appeals chamber will firstly go over the verdict handed down by the trial chamber last May in finding Charles Taylor guilty of aiding and abetting as well as planning those crimes perpetrated in Sierra Leone. They have various options. They can overturn the guilty verdict completely, reduce or extend that 50-year prison sentence as well, prosecutors are obviously looking for those 80 years they initially asked for. The defense has put forward around 42 grounds on which they feel this trial was either improperly handled or where they feel the verdict was unjustified. We'll see what the verdict is later on.
All right, Sandra Guthman joining us there on the line from The Hague. Now, public schools in Egypt have finally opened after an extended summer break. The country's recent turmoil had delayed the start of the new term, but for many parents, there is little reason to celebrate. CCTV's Adel Makhroui tells us more.
Egypt's economic problems are hurting ordinary people. And for parents, the new school term has brought fresh financial pain. They're having to pay far more for tuition fees and supplies, such as notebooks.
Most Egyptian families pay between 30 to 50% of their annual income to school-related expenses. When it comes to lower socioeconomic classes who earn $80 a month, school affects their basic needs like food. So when you're required to get a $1 notebook, that's half of what he owns to pay in a day to support his entire family. So he couldn't care less about education.
And it's not just rising costs that are a worry. State schooling here is in trouble. Egypt's state education system is ranked the last among 148 nations. Almost all schools need massive renovation. They're overcrowded and violent child abuse is common. The principal of this school says his pupils are among the fortunate ones.
We have formed a board of trustees and got the government's approval to collect donations. So many parents and organizations help us, but we need more.
State schooling could deteriorate still further this year. The government has cut the budget from $108 million to just 62. Many parents are expected to put their children into private schools.
They are government employees, not well off. They would exact all their financial efforts to give their children better education. They are squeezed.
I felt that the level of public schools will harm my kids' behaviors. There's violence and there's blackmail, so students would pay for private lessons with their teachers.
The government has been insisting that education should be free, but Egyptians are now spending $2.5 billion a year on private lessons and supplies. This pile of garbage does not only indicate the responsibility that the government bears, but it also reflects how much residents of this neighborhood care about educating their children. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Let's now take a quick look at the business news for today. Penina Karibe is here. Penina.
Thank you, Beatrice. Coming up on Biz Africa tonight.